Mirror: migration-related risks caused by misconceptions of opportunities and requirement.
Thank you, Katja, for this nice introduction. I'm very pleased to be here. It's very nice location. So I'm glad that I came here to Malta. So as Katja said, I will present some findings from our field research, which was done within the Mirror project. Fieldwork was led by University of Vienna's communication department and Agent 4 in Italy, and us as Fremde werden Freunde. I think my presentation fits very well in what we've heard in the morning and picks up on some questions which were raised in the various discussions. Our objectives and our aim was to deepen the understanding of migrants and refugees' media use at different stages of the migration process. So like what role does the smartphone play during the process of migration? What role do social media play in the process of migration? But also to identify information gaps and potential perception and misperceptions migrants and refugees have from Europe and the European Union. We also tried to analyze information-seeking processes beforehand, but also like how people and how migrants and refugees would rate trust and credibility of information of sources. We understand migration decision-making as media supported, so we do believe that media, or the mobile media, plays an important role. I will come back to that later. But we also believe that contemporary migration is often characterized by its processual nature. So it's not a like single step-by-step process, but it's like circular. It's a continuous process. So in some cases, the country of transit will become the country of destination. In some country, the country of destination will be the country of transit at a later stage. And we do believe that many migration decisions are only made when already en route. So there's first decision, but many other decisions are only made when being already en route. And I will focus on being on the route. Quickly, our data and methodology. Claudia mentioned some of these in the morning. So our field research is based on 152 semi-structured interviews with migrants and refugees conducted in August 2020 and May 21. So we focused on migration hubs and like crossroads for migration rather than on countries of origin. So we focus on 6 different locations: Austria, Bosnia and Hercegovina, Italy, Jordan, Libya, and Turkey. And additionally to these interviews, we conducted 40+ expert interviews with people from academia, civil society organizations, researchers working in that field. And our research process was participatory. So we wanted to do research with irregular migrants and with migrants and refugees rather than on migrants. So we included them in the research process. Researchers who acted as interviewers were refugees and migrants themselves. And they conducted interviews in their native language when possible. That was the case in Austria, in Italy, and in Bosnia and Herzegovina. And of course, we followed the do no harm approach. We didn't want to expose them to any additional risk. So we wanted to keep the questions only focused around our research questions. When we came to field research in Bosnia and Herzegovina, 31 interviews were done. And we are very happy that we could have a very balanced gender balance. We have 60 men and 15 women. Our interviewees came from Iran, mainly. This was due to the fact that at the time of our interviews, there was a visa liberalization between Serbia and Iran. So many Irani migrants and refugees flew into Serbia. Then we had 4 migrants and refugees from Afghanistan, 7 from Iraq, 3 from Pakistan, and 1 from Cameroon. Our interviews were done in IOM reception centers, Borici, Setra, and Uživac, and you can see it on the map. 2 of them are very, very close to the Croatian border, and 1 of them is close to the capital of Sarajevo. Due to COVID situation, our interviews had to take place remotely via Zoom and Jitsi. And additionally, we conducted expert interviews with civil society organizations, state authorities, and international organizations working in the field of migration. One of the focuses of our field research was the role of the smartphone. And what we see, which is not surprisingly, that the smartphone is a migration essential. It's essential for a successful migration, especially in transit. I don't want to go too deep into numbers. We did qualitative research, but we can see is that the vast majority do have or did have smartphones. Only 2 mentioned to share one with the families, and 2 don't have ones. The most common app used in transit were Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, and Telegram. And I will go more into detail in these apps in a bit. And the 4 main functions reported in Bosnia and Herzegovina were communication, so staying in contact with other people, staying informed about migration, but also about like news worldwide. Then, of course, GPS and navigation to like find the route, to find borders, to navigate to certain locations. But then, last but not least, entertainment. That's why my title is called in Europe's Waiting Room. Bosnia and Herzegovina is for many, many people the entrance to the European Union, and they have to wait there for a very long time. So there's a need to distract themselves, to entertain themselves. So many interviews reported to use their smartphones for entertainment purposes. What is important is that is the fact that the Croatian border police confiscates and destroys refugees and migrants' cell phones very frequently. A third stated that they made this experience. And for example, we have this quote from a woman from Iran who said, "When we left Iran, we all had mobile phones. But unfortunately, during the games, which is border crossings, our phones were confiscated by the police. My brother and I have lost 6 phones since leaving Iran." And many share these experiences, and also an expert working in the state authorities shared that with us. That of course, they're aware that the smartphone is an essential, either for going further or for navigation purposes, but also for filming illegal pushbacks, for example. So they want to avoid this risk. Being in transit means, for us, being in transit means that you are currently on a location where you don't want to remain. So being in Bosnia, we see that there are 3 different directions of communication flows. There is on the one hand the country of origin, so people reported to communicate with their families, with their friends back home on not very strategic issues such as day-to-day communication, keeping updated, and so on. Then there's, on the other hand, the communication with destination Europe or destination European Union. It's not so strategic neither. So it's not always migration-related communication, but it's keeping each other up to date, informing them where they are, at what process of the route, but also communication among friends who are living in Europe and so on. And which is very important, and which is the most important communication, is the communication within the transit. So the communication with other people on the route. We see that there are different factors and different communicators. So there is communication among migrants and refugees themselves. And many shared that social media and smartphones are absolutely vital to stay in contact with other refugees and other migrants. So it's communication with strangers, so it's communication with people they met on the route and they have not known before. And this communication is mainly done in social media groups. So it's WhatsApp, it's Telegram, it's Instagram, and it's Facebook mainly. And interestingly, what we see is that there are differences between nationalities. So it tends that people from Iran and from Afghanistan, Farsi and Dari-speaking people, contact each other via Telegram and WhatsApp way more often than Arabic-speaking people. We don't see the differences in Facebook. And this was also shared by some experts who had made the same experiences, that it seems that people from Iran are especially active on Telegram. And what we see, that these information flows are very step-by-step information flows. So it's like very short-term communication. It's about what borders are open on the next day. So it's like very strategic, but on a very short term. And what we see is that this information exchange is on very practical issues, like which reception center is open, what are the newest COVID regulations, which border crossing is not controlled by the police, and so on and so on. And we've heard also, like in the morning, and what we've heard a lot in our interview is that, of course, social media is important, but it's only an important channel. It depends very, very much on the people who are communicating and who are using it, such as the woman from Iran who shared with us that Telegram does not help. People who are active in Telegram do help. The advisors on which routes to go, where the police are, when they get home, they talk regularly and advise others on what time the train arrives, how the route looks like. So it's really this step-by-step information which is vital for many migrants and refugees in Bosnia. And what we see is that this information is not some information which was acquired beforehand, because of course this information changes very quickly. So after the initial decision to leave one's country, people are not informed which borders to take or which routes to take, because they would not know what kind of border, what border crossings would be open in like 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, or even 5 years. So this is really something which changes very quickly, and it's very helpful with like social media. What we see also that communication with human traffickers plays a role, not as important as with other migrants. We see that direct communication takes mainly place via phone call, so it's no written communication on a direct basis, but many smugglers intervene on social media in these Telegram groups, which are made for or made by migrants and refugees. And what we see as well is that not only human traffickers, but also other migrants and refugees try to make money out of the other people and ask for money for their help in these groups. What we see, and we had that also in the discussion today, is that institutional communication, organizational communication is very weak in Bosnia. So it's practically no importance, it has no importance for migrants and refugees, because organizations, institutions, the state authorities, they do not communicate in the same channels as the migrants and refugees. So we have never heard that communication or information or sources from any organizations in Bosnia are of any importance. But what we know is that Wi-Fi is absolutely essential at reception centers. When it comes to misinformation and trust, we see that most refugees and migrants felt very well informed before the departure. They felt informed about a specific country where they want to go, because, as I mentioned, they don't deal with these border issues beforehand. What we see, of course, as well, is that there is a higher level of trust in friends they know who have already made it to Europe, either like long time ago or shortly before them. But there's a very, very high level of mistrust in other refugees and in other migrants in transit, and also a high level of mistrust in smugglers. So one man from Iraq shared with us the information I received from other refugees is not completely accurate. Maybe just 20% of it is correct, and most information I received was incorrect. So there's a very high level of mistrust among the people themselves, as they know that they, like others, want to move quicker than the others. What is the problem is that it's very hard to verify certain information, because you can't just Google open borders. So people have to believe in others, and they're still dependent on others. Because if you really want to move forward, and if your goal is to reach the European Union or a specific country, you have to trust in other people. So like one man from Pakistan who shared with us, you have to trust someone who can bring you over the border. And to conclude, we see that mobile media and smartphones are essential in the migration process. But of course, it's more important to have people behind the media and the smartphone. Social media per se is not decisive for living one's country, but is crucial in the step-by-step decisions and for getting further. We see also that the majority of people did research and felt well informed after the initial decision to leave one's country, but they felt sort of a delusion in Bosnia and Herzegovina. The importance and also the functions of media use change over time and fulfill different functions at different stages of the migration process. And what we see as well is that institutional communication failed at large. Thank you so much.